Okay, let's get started with our configurations. And in the assembly, if we right click on that part, we can tell that part to open. And now we have that into our assembly over here. So let's go ahead and make some modifications to this. So we're going to go ahead and turn everything on. I'm going to go ahead and turn on our cut, which we have over here initially on the left, but what we really want to do is we're going to put that in the back. Let's go ahead and make that a little bit more descriptive. We're going to call that our back cut. So we're going to be a little bit organized with this thing, and we're going to make sure we have all of our features labeled. It'll make it a lot easier when we're turning on and off or suppressing or unsuppressing certain features in this in order to get our configurations together. So there's our back cut, and let's go ahead, just to get started, let's go ahead into our configuration manager and let's go ahead and rename some stuff up here too. So all configurations, all parts come with one configuration, and it's always called default. And you'll notice that if you go back to the assembly, you'll see that name default as part of the name of that part in the assembly. So it's got a default configuration, and it has a default view there too. But we're going to go ahead and call that, instead of default, we're going to call that all. One thing to note about all is we're going to put everything in here. Everything goes into the all. All the elements that we're going to have that's going to show here is going to be under the all configuration. And it's on top of the tree too. It's going to order that by alphabetically, so it's going to be on top of the tree too, which is probably where we want it to be. So let's do this. Let's go back to our feature. And let's go to our circular pattern in here and make sure that we have this revolved all the way around. We want to make sure that we have some, our hinge rounds and our cuts in the front here too. So let's right click on our hinge cut, and yours might be configured a little bit differently here. But I think if you just did 4 instead of 3 in this, and maybe click out here in the modeling area so you can see the preview of what you're going to be getting, that should do it. But you might have to make some different modifications depending on how you put your model together in order to get that there. So if you go to the green check mark, bang, there it goes. And we're going to take our back cut, at least for now, and we're going to go ahead and suppress that. So if we refer back to our all configuration up here, we have everything in here that we need. And everything after that is going to be a series of cuts. Okay, next thing we want to do is we want to create our next configuration. So we already have all in it, so let's go ahead and do back and right. So let's go to our configuration manager, and we always want to start with all in here too, by the way. So we're going to click on all. Of course, it's already selected, but when we have other configurations in here, you always want to default back to all. So we're going to go right click on the top, and we're going to go ahead and add a configuration. That first choice right down from the top, we're going to call this back. And right, so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we see only the back and the right hinge rounds and cuts in here. So if we go to the green check mark, and now we have 2 configurations. If we go back and forth between the two, you can see that it changes wildly between one and the other. Actually, it doesn't change at all, but all's still going to be on top, and back right's going to be on the bottom. So this is where we're going to make some changes in our feature manager tree. So let's go back to our feature manager, and let's go ahead and make some cuts. So let's go ahead, at least temporarily, we're going to go up to our base plate. We're going to go ahead to our sketch 1, right click on that, and we're going to tell that sketch 1 to show. So we're going to use some of this geometry that we have in that sketch in order to put in our rectangle, which we're going to be using for cutting. So again, go back to our configuration. We're going to do the right and back. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be keeping these, but getting rid of these two. So we're going to make a front cut, and we're going to make our left cut. So let's start with the front cut. We're going to go up to sketch, and let's go ahead and choose our top plane first. So we're going to go to sketch, and we're going to go ahead and do a corner rectangle. So we're going to start with this point over here. Going to sketch that out. It's going to be hard to select that point because there's going to be a line if we do that. But we're going to start with this point over here and exaggerate that a little bit. Kind of scoot in here a little bit. We're going to take this point and that point. We're going to make that coincident. And just an arbitrary dimension in here. If we go to smart dimension, we're going to make that 1 inch. So now if we go to our features, I think you know how to do this. If you go to extruded cut, through all both, green check mark, and now we have that taken care of. So we're going to call this our front cut. And we want to keep that feature active. By keeping that active, it takes that cut in there, puts that in there, but it also takes out the front hinge rounds and the hinge cuts there too. So we're going to do the same thing on the right hand side. Same thing. We're going to go to the top plane, go to sketch, corner rectangle, Maybe start from that point over here, go over here, take this point and that point. We're going to make that coincident. Use our shortcut menu next to the cursor, and then Smart Dimension over here. And I think we just click on that over here. We could do the Smart Dimension over here too, which is going to be that, a shortcut menu. We're going to make that 1. And now if we take that, you get out of that dimension, it gives us some options over here, but I think we still need to go over here to Features, go to Extruded Cut, and then we're going to make that through all both here also, and go to the green check mark. And now we're going to call this our left cut. So type that in real quick. And now if we go back to our configuration manager, and this is what we want, this is going to be our back right feature configuration. So if we go back to our configuration manager and click on all, that's all. This is back right. Okay, some more configurations. This one we're going to create a front back one. So we're going to go up to the very top of our configuration manager, go to add configuration. We're going to call this front back. Oh, back doesn't have a Q in it. Where did that come from? So go to the green check mark, and kind of like what we did before, we actually should have started with the all configuration, but let's go ahead and do this. Let's go to front back, and we want to make sure that we have the front showing and the back showing, but we need to make a cut for the right. So, you know, a better way of doing this, actually, as I just alluded to, is you probably want to start with all, and we'll do that for the next configuration, so you can actually see everything that's there, and then go ahead and suppress everything or make active everything after that. So let's go ahead and do our feature manager, and let's go ahead and make that right cut. So just like we did before, top plane, sketch, corner rectangle, start from this point over here, drag that over there, take that point and this point, we're going to make that coincident, make that coincident relationship over here, and go over here and put in our dimension in there, a smart dimension. Immediately jump to features, extruded cut, through all, both, and then green check mark, and now we can call that our right cut. Okay, so now that we have that in place, we want to make sure we're in the right configuration. We want front and back. So in order to get to front, we're going to take that front cut and we're going to suppress that. So there we have it. Confirm again, go to your configuration manager, front back. We got that correct over here. And let's go ahead and check our other configurations while we're at it, just to make sure that they're still intact. Back and right still good, and all should show everything still. So that's good. That's the way that works. Okay, so now that we have everything in place, let's go back to all. We're going to create one more configuration, and this one's going to be called the front left. So right click on top of our configuration manager, we're going to add configuration, call that front left, and go to the green check mark. So it's going to borrow all the configurations, all the components that we had over here in the all configuration up here. So all we have to do is we have to turn off we're going to keep the front and the left, so we're going to turn off the back and the right. So let's go to our feature manager tree, and let's take a look at this. We have a configuration in here, or at least a feature in here, a cut feature in here called back cut, which we kind of want to use that. We can't really rename items in the tree that's already been named with something else. So we're going to take that back cut and we're actually going to call that what it really should be called, and that's going to be back hinge cut. Oh, H-I-N-G-E, so back hinge cut. So we're going to go ahead and keep that. So now we're going to go ahead and create a back cut. So we want to keep our front, we want to keep our left, we want to cut everything on the right. So we're going to take that back, or that right cut, we're going to go ahead and unsuppress that, and now we're going to take our back cut and we're going to create a cut in the back. So guys, real quick, as fast as we can do this, corner rectangle, and we're going to go ahead and sketch that out, this point and that point over here. We're going to make that coincident, and we're going to put an arbitrary dimension on this. 1 inch will work. And boy, I'm just flubbing with the mouse clicking here. But once we get that in place, we go to features, extruded cut, through wall both, and then go to the green check mark. And now we have our cut extrude number 1. We're going to go ahead and rename that as our back cut. So there we go. So let's go back and check our configurations. We have our front left, which is what we have there. And then we have our front back. That looks good. right back or back right, and then everything under our all configuration. And there we go. So one last one in here is going to be the back hinge cut. Okay, we're going to create one last configuration. It's going to be a derived configuration. So, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to the front back configuration here, and we're going to actually make a cut up here in order to take out one of these hinge rounds, and that hinge round is going to be like right there in the middle. So then we cut it out on one side and flip that hinge over like what we're going to do in the assembly, that we're going to have that cut on the other side too, so it makes a nice broad clearance in here, so we can put the push rod in place so it can actually connect to the pin, but we'll get to that here in a moment. So we're going to start with the front back, and let's go ahead and redefine this. Before we get started, let's take our back hinge cut, and if it's not suppressed, or if it's suppressed right now, let's go ahead and bring that back. Let's bring that back to life. We're going to go ahead and unsuppress that. And let's take a look at our sketch 16, and what we want to do is we want to move that. So if you look at our sketch 6, I guess it is, your sketch number is going to be different. I'm almost certain of that. But if you take that sketch 6, it's actually making a cut where there is no substance. Sometimes SolidWorks doesn't like you to do that, but it seems to be acceptable or accepting here. What we want to do is we want to take that sketch and move that up here and cut out this round up here. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and redefine that a little bit. Let's go to Edit Sketch, and one thing we can do is just like delete it and get that out of there. Or we can redefine that, and there's a lot of sketch relations in here, so I'm just going to go ahead and do the selection box and select everything inside that box and go ahead and redefine that. Now if we were to right click on this, maybe go normal to that surface, I'm going to click my N key, which is my shortcut for normal. Let's go ahead and sketch out a brand new rectangle. We're going to go ahead and choose this point over here and maybe that point over here and put that rectangle in. So what do I do here? I actually clicked a place where there is no sketch point. What you can do here, and let's go ahead and delete this real quick and show you that one more time. As long as you're normal to it, I think it'll work only if you're normal to it, but you could actually select these points in here and use that as part of your sketch you're putting together. So you could use existing sketch geometry to do that. So I think you have to be normal here to actually select it. I can select this one, but I can't seem to select that one. So it's always best if you're normal to the screen when you're putting something like that together. So again, real quick, go from that point over here to this point over here, and use an existing sketch geometry. That thing is fully defined, no dimensions necessary. And if we go ahead and rebuild that, bang, now that's in place. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and suppress that and bring that back. Let's go back to the configuration that we're in, which is going to be the front back configuration. It is from this configuration that we're going to create a derived configuration. So we're going to go ahead and click on derived configuration. We don't have to go to the top of our tree up here, but if you just go to that one configuration, add derived, click on that. This one's going to be called our back hinge cut, and go to the green check mark. And now you can see nothing happened. So if you go to this little triangle over here and open that up, we can toggle between these two different configurations, which right now are going to be the same because we haven't done anything to them. But now we're going to take that front back, which is going to have the hinge and the cuts in the front and the back, go over here to our feature manager tree, right click on back hinge cut, and we're going to unsuppress that. So now if we go to our configuration, now you can see the difference. So here's the front back, and the front back with the back hinge cut. And then just check our other configurations. We have right back, which is good. All shows us everything. And then our front left. Sounds good. So let's go ahead and save this. So if we go up to File, Save, there we go. So remember, we saved this as a part. We probably still have the assembly saved in the background. So when we get to the assembly in the background, it's going to look a little bit different from when we left it. So just a real quick summary of what we did. We took our configuration manager, which started with default, and it just had everything that we had in the feature manager tree. And then from that default, we created a configuration called all, which contains everything that we want to have in the hinge. If you go and click on that, you can see what we have. Then we created other configurations after that. We created our right back, our front back, and then our front left configurations. If we were to go to the feature manager tree, all we did was suppress, or unsuppress various cuts that we had in here in order to get the configuration that we wanted. And of course, the last configuration we put together was called the back hinge cut. And it's very similar to the front-back configuration, but the back hinge cut allows us to take out that little knob, that little hinge round in here in order to provide the accommodation for a Sarrus push rod. So that, in short, is a lesson on configurations.